Hello, I am the Jordan coach of the original Bike Vault. Welcome to the Draftables, a series in which I do a deep dive analysis into important parts of VGC Draft League. This week is the big, long-awaited Trick Room episode. I'm going to assume you know what Trick Room is and that it is very good in VGC, so I'm going to try to spend as much of my time as possible on the big questions, like how much Trick Room do you want on your Draft League team? Hint, you definitely want some. What is the definition of a great Trick Room setter for Draft League? Why is that different from tournament formats? And what great/good/usable Trick Room setters might you be overlooking for your next draft? Both of my Draft League teams that made finals featured a heavy Trick Room mode, and my worst Draft League team also featured a heavy Trick Room mode, so I feel pretty equipped to talk about this one. It's probably going to be my longest Draftables episode, so I'm going to try to be efficient with it. If you like analytical VGC content like the Draftables, please leave a like below. I would really appreciate it. Let's jump right in. A Trick Room setter is basically mandatory on a great Draft League team. This is a point on which I will not budge, because a game plan against any team without the option to set Trick Room becomes a lot more straightforward and a lot easier. Going first is very important in VGC, and knowing that Trick Room is the ultimate speed control, the move that turns all efforts to go fast and go first against the opponent. Without that, the opponent can set tailwind, pile on the icy winds, the T-waves, every effort to make themselves faster than you, and you have no way to counteract that or directly counteract that in the way that Trick Room does. So every game becomes a fast mode war, at least to the extent speed control is important, which it usually is. Without Trick Room, or the threat to imprison Trick Room, strong Trick Room modes will come against your team. They will have usually guaranteed Trick Room setups when they can prepare in advance against the team, your team, and what you might have, and strong Trick Room modes will simply outnumber you. Here's an important realization about Trick Room. This is the average stats of a Mon with 30 base speed. A very slow speed on average. They've got offense and defense stats close to 90, and you get compensated, which would make sense. For having a slow speed means, in general, higher offense and defense. So the average fully evolved Pokemon with a 115 speed stat, so pretty fast, have much lower bulk stats, lower attack stats. So there's it's not a clear relationship. There are some mons that break the rules, and they've been featured on past Draftables episodes, but in general, a fast mon is about 15% frailer and 15% weaker than a slow mon. So if you're getting into Trick Room, not only are you doing speed control, but you're also indirectly buffing your mons relative to them, because Escavalier is not only slow, so it becomes fast, but it's already strong and tanky. So good Trick Room sweepers, really, really tough to beat in Trick Room. That should be a pretty understandable conclusion. But important conclusion, important understanding is that if you played VGC on ladder, if you played it in tournaments, you usually see a few Trick Room setters rise above all others. That usually has to do with the meta, what mons are popular, but in my 2 years of being aware of competitive VGC, it's usually been one of these 6 that have been the top Trick Room setter, if it's not a restricted legendary, which are not in Draft League, so I won't talk about them. But most of these mons are not as dominant in Draft League as they are on ladder. Just because they're the best in the tournament format does not make them well suited to Draft League. Draft League's usually about what different things can you threaten to do at once, what niche option do you have that's really good for this matchup. Some of these mods get way worse in Draft League, like Stakataka. Its big weaknesses to fighting and ground become very exploitable because there's a lot of random focus blasts out there that threaten to OHKO Stakataka. I know, I'll talk about that more later. On ladder, you might bring one taunter, maybe, or you might bring one way to address Trick Room. But if you're playing against a team with Porygon 2, with Dusclops, you're going to bring random taunts. And the opponents, the P2 player's not going to know where they're coming from. Like a random Heatran with taunt, a random Arctozolt with taunt is all of a sudden viable against P2 and Dusclops, knowing that's the best way to shut them down, prevent Trick Room, prevent a lot of what they're doing. So it becomes a lot harder to have one great Trick Room and build your whole Draft League team around it. What makes a good Trick Room setter is different in Draft League, and I think it boils down to a couple of things. How bulky are you? How well can you take hits? So that's a combination of your bulk and defensive typing. And are you gifted with any ability to stop the common things that would prevent a Trick Room? Like, if you have Inner Focus, you can't get faked out. If you're a Ghost type, you can't get faked out. If you have Aroma Veil or Oblivious, then you're immune to Taunt, and that's one of the best ways to stop Trick Room. If you're Mimikyu specifically, or you have Sturdy, then you cannot be one-hit KO'd, period. And so that's really, really nice for making that guaranteed Trick Room setup. Mimikyu actually has two of the common preventers of the common ways to stop Trick Room, so it cannot be faked out as a Ghost type. Its Disguise ability prevents any Okos, so it's one of the best Trick Room setters. That has been true in many tournament formats, and it's also true here. If we're talking about specifically good at setting Trick Room, I think Mimikyu is the best out there. But there aren't that many, like, foolproof, this makes a mon always better at setting Trick Room. In Draft League, everything is matchup dependent, and so I don't think there is such a thing as a bad Trick Room setter. There are just mons that focus more on other things other than Trick Room. Like, these are some frail Trick Room setters, which means that they frequently can get knocked out as they attempt to set up Trick Room. But like, they're great Pokemon. Like, I have no problem with any of these mons. I don't like Nihiliga because it's too frail, but with a Sash, it frequently can sneak a Trick Room in here. And so I think the only bad thing would be depending on a mon like Gengar or Nihiliga to set Trick Room when it's very at risk of dying. Do not depend on them for Trick Room. I think they're a good second Trick Room setter. They're good for surprising, game warping Trick Rooms. Ben in the VBLS has used his Gengar in multiple seasons to set a Trick Room after in previous games going offensive with his Gengar, and then just randomly sets up Trick Room and totally changes the tide of the game. That's what any mon with Trick Room can do. Trick Room is an enormously impactful move. And so you want a bulky Trick Room setter, but any mon with Trick Room is good. It provides you new options for the game. So with that understanding, I'm going to get into my first showcase mon, a very, very good Trick Room setter, Dusknoir. Dusknoir, you've probably noticed in your previous draft leagues, is not a mon that gets drafted in the first few rounds. It's usually one or more of the meta Trick Room gods. It's not a mon that people build their entire teams around. It's not a mon that people seem to be super jazzed to draft. I think there's a fair amount of respect for it, but I think it is overlooked as one of the best Trick Room setters out there. In particular, one of the best Trick Room setters for Draft League. Variety is the spice of draft, and Dusknoir has enough to be a pretty good Pokemon in virtually every dimension you could ask of it. It is a good attacker. It is a versatile attacker. Not only do we have the best Ghost move, but we have Edgequake. We have all the elemental punches. We have fighting coverage. These 6 moves together hit almost every single Pokemon super effectively. This is incredible coverage. I was very surprised to see just how good Dusknoir's attacking coverage is. Off 100 attack stat, that prevents one of the common pitfalls of Trick Room setters, which is being too passive. Like, if you can't stop them from setting Trick Room, then you just ignore them. You ignore them as much as possible because they can't make great use of their Trick Room by themselves. Dusknoir can, right? There's no way to ignore Poltergeist unless you don't have an item, but there's no way to avoid super effective elemental punches coming at you turn after turn. So Dusknoir is a good attacker, a good Trick Room setter. It is bulkier than 4 out of 5 fully evolved Pokemon. So it gets overlooked relative to Dusclops, the super ridiculously bulky Trick Room god with the Eviolite, but it has the variety of being able to actually run an item. In Draft League, that's particularly important. You know which teams are going to be trying to taunt you. And so, well, every team, if you have a strong Trick Room mode, they're going to try to taunt you to prevent the Trick Room. And so Dusknoir can actually bring the Mental Herb without sacrificing on bulk. What's good about Dusknoir, because it is attracting taunts so often that even if it doesn't have the Mental Herb, you can run totally different sets that cause them to waste a turn taunting you. It can be an Icy Wind or a Rock Tomb Mon that sets speed control on the fast mode. If you give it a couple of turns, which it usually has, with its bulk, then you can suck some HP. You can set up some curses. You can imprison their Trick Room. You can burn them. You can haze off of their stat boost. boosts, you can mess with their item, you can shut down their support. This is a really good supportive move pool, and the mon's not fast, right? It's not going to be great outside of Trick Room, or at least it's not going to be immediately threatening, but over time it's certainly threatening. This is a move for virtually any circumstance. Until you know all 4 of Dust Noir's moves, it definitely can surprise you. Yeah, like, I don't want to get Destiny bonded and lose my most important Mon as I try to target Dust Noir. I don't want to get my most important move disabled. Like, what's Dracovish without Vicious Rend? I think this Mon can live of Vicious Rend because it's pretty bulky. We also even have the special coverage when, like, we're playing against Incineroar and we don't want to get intimidated over and over. We can be a special sweeper, right? The perils of ignoring a Dust Noir is that it can do a little bit of everything. In fact, it can do a fair amount of everything. So look at this attacking coverage. Like, these 7 types that it's got good moves with no downsides on. I guess Rock Slide can miss, but even more likely it's going to steal the opponent's turn with a flinch. So good move, and you're hitting 90% of Pokemon super effectively. You're not going to be able to run all of these moves. You're going to maybe run 2 to 3 of them because 1 slot is usually devoted for Trick Room, but there's no way to play safely against a Dust Noir, assuming that it can't hit you super effectively, because it usually can. Here's some examples of how Dust Noir comes together. Set your own Trick Room and just smack things with a Life Orb, right? It's got the Poltergeist, Ice and Ground, virtually nothing resists both Ice and Ground, so pretty good there. Sometimes you see a match in which there's very few, if any, Ghost resists. Ghost possibly the very best single type for hitting everything neutrally, so you just run Ghost boosting item, strong Ghost move, priority Ghost move. So Dust Noir doesn't need to be in Trick Room to be effective with Shadow Sneak. So can set a Trick Room, can be mixed between damage and utility. Will-O-Wisp, very valuable. This is like a special Dust Noir if it's trying to beat some physical walls. Calm Mind, the best boosting move out there, plus Shadow Ball for neutral coverage, and then Will-O-Wisp to beat the physical attackers, Trick Room because Trick Room is massively impactful. Even Stall Noir possible. I don't necessarily think you should fully commit to this, but like you can pressure stall, you can, like Pain Split and Nightshade have lots of PP, so you can just slowly Pain Split them, prevent them from boosting because you haze the boosts away, prevent them from using support moves because you taunt them away, and just a lot of mons will really struggle to beat a max defense Dust Noir, so it could win endgames that way. So you can run 2 of these moves while the other 2 moves are devoted to like Trick Room and 1 immediate attack. You have mix and match ability here, particularly with your item slot in a way that Dusclops and P2 don't have. So that's the Draft League difference, is very different sets here, offensive, defensive, and everything in between. And so I think that this is the Mon very well suited to Draft League. Am I paying as much as Dusclops? No, not quite, but I think it's only 3 or 4 points shy. I would pay 11 points, and that's, I think, one of the more expensive Trick Room Mons in general. Trick Room being slow is a challenge in this game. It needs Trick Room to help itself go first, and so usually Trick Room Mons are not top tier. I think this is one of the higher prices you should be willing to pay, because Dust Noir has what it needs. It has the offense to be formidable, it has the defense to live most of the strong hits that would be targeting it. This is the strongest Shadow Ball I can think of. Dust Noir with appropriate bulk investment can get there. This is one of the strongest physical dark moves I can think of. With enough bulk, Dust Noir can get there. So it's really, really nice. Variety is the spice of draft. Have I said it enough? Very good Trick Room setter. Segue to my next showcase Mon. Dust Noir is weak to Ghost and Dark. Guess what a lot of Trick Room setters have in common? Psychic, Psychic, Psychic type, Ghost, 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 Psychic, 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 Ghost, 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 Ghost. A lot of them are weak to Ghost and Dark type moves, and occasionally you want to be able to add a Latias to your team, another Psychic or Ghost type that isn't just your Trick Room setter. You don't want to really be weak to Ghost and Dark type moves because it makes your Trick Room setter a lot less usable. So the rare Trick Room setter that isn't weak to Ghost or isn't weak to Dark is just as valuable as the rare Trick Room setter that isn't weak to Fake Out or Taunt. And our next Trick Room setter, immune to both Fake Out and Ghost moves. All of the Poltergeist and Shadow Ball is coming to try to hit Oranguru. It's got that. One of the only mons that likes to add a normal typing. Is Psychic Normal, is immune to ghosts. So that makes one of the things that makes Oranguru an amazing Trick Room setter. I'm generally focusing on non-Dynamax for my analysis here, and Instruct is one of the best possible moves in the game in a non-Dynamax format. It is unbelievably incredible, and it is unique to Oranguru. I have drafted Oranguru, so you've seen it on a couple of my team builders and live commentaries, but I do have to call it out as one of the gods of Draft League Trick Room. I think I would pay nearly as much for this guy as I would for, what are the meta Trick Room gods? As much for it as Stakataka, nearly as much for it as I would for Cresselia, because with one slot, you have access to everything your partner's doing and and all of the stats your partner's using to do it. So Instruct is amazing in a Draft League game where you frequently want to have lots of different tools. Having 4 moves in one, even more than 4 when you consider that Instruct can be paired with multiple different Pokemon over the course of the game. Instruct is unbelievably amazing, and what might not be appreciated from people who've just seen Oranguru in a ladder format is that this is a pretty good attacker. It's got a 90 special attack, and it's got great boosting moves. Calm Mind, Nasty Plot. Sometimes you don't need any more bulk, and so you just want to get strong really quickly, and then Nasty Plot does that for you. If you are instructing a mon to do multiple Calm Minds a turn, then all of a sudden you can just copy all those boosts and make Oranguru a real threat. This is not a huge amount of coverage, but it is rather nicely placed coverage. So this is a combination you frequently see on a kind of Trick Room setter mon: Psychic plus Shadow Ball plus Focus Blast. And just those 3 moves hit nothing can resist all 3, and it hits over half of Mon super effectively, so that's really good. Just those 3 types. Then you add on that it has Thunderbolt and Energy Ball, and you're hitting 3/4 of all Mon super effectively. This is really, really nice coverage, and I think Oranguru can be an offensive Mon. The ability to both make your partner super scary, but also protect your partner, and Nasty Plot or Psychic. Having Oranguru be not a passive Pokemon can be really, really nice. And it's got some of the best support moves here. Trick Room, of course, but also this is one of the best imprisoned Trick Roomers possible, because the challenge of, like, this is the best way to stop Trick Room, period. I'm getting ahead of myself. I've got a section on that. The best way to stop Trick Room is Imprison plus Trick Room. It's uncounterable. Like, you can taunt them, but Oranguru is usually carrying the Mental Herb anyway. But the problem with Imprisoned Trick Room is that you've devoted 2 of your slots to stopping something from happening. How do you make sure this mon is threatening with its other 2 move slots? Instruct is the best way. 1 slot, lots of different options, and then just one attack. Or if you've already got the Mental Herb, then you can just carry another supportive move like Ally Switch. For better or for worse, I'm not a fan of Ally Switch, but it is a very good move on most Trick Room setters because they're searching for a way to be relevant outside of setting Trick Room, and so being bulky and being a meat shield for a mon that is more threatening is, for better or for worse, a very, very good move on a Trick Room setter. But this is a mon that can really, really cause problems using Yawn. It can be just generally useful with screens. Safeguard and Trick and Taunt are very good mischief moves. Lots of different mischief that Oranguru can do, and you don't want be doing a lot of this. You mostly want to be clicking Instruct, Trick Room, some offense, but this is a very good skill set on a bulky mon with few weaknesses and good offense. This is everything you could ask for, including a unique gift that you shouldn't have to ask for. I have a great showcase when I used Oranguru in a speed tour. And Oranguru really, really controlled the game. I'm going to drop that in the description. This is a really fun replay to watch. But this is a top league Draft League Trick Room setter. I said there's no real top tier in Draft League Trick Room setting because they're all usable for different circumstances. This is one of the best. This is a mon you should pay top dollar for. This is a mon you can take relatively early in the draft. The combination of great stats, great typing, great move pool, multiple great abilities that I haven't even gotten to, it can't be faked out. It also has immunities to one of the common Trick Room stoppers. It also enables all of the spread moves. It also can send its item to a mon that's really trying to become a sweeper. It's so exciting a mon, so fun a mon to use. Draft Oranguru. Let's move on. I'm going to sprinkle in some anecdotes about great Trick Room teams, trying to answer the question, how much Trick Room is the right amount of Trick Room for your Draft League squad? This is one approach that really worked, which was like half Trick Room. Half of this team either loved Trick Room or at least was compatible with Trick Room. It was also my very first Draft League. This team was ridiculous. It stomped most teams on its way to finals. In some ways, it doesn't necessarily hold up to the most competitive draft leagues that I've joined since, but in other ways, it was better than it had any business being based on like my skill level and experience level at the time. Some things just worked out, like Lando T sharing no weaknesses with Primarina, sharing no weaknesses with Vikavolt, sharing no weaknesses with Machamp, and they were my 4 main sweepers. Vikavolt went 12-3, and it's the reason that it's my mascot today. But all of these slow and mid-speed mons that liked being in Trick Room were supported by Dusclops, a super bulkier than 97% of Pokemon Trick Room setter. So the thing I think doesn't hold up is that I would probably need these days a second Trick Room setter that's different than Dusclops, because every team's going to bring Taunt, Knockoff every single time to try to deal with it. But I did have a top tier support protecting the Dusclops. If they were going to taunt my Dusclops, I just prankster taunt them first. If they're going to try to double up into my Dusclops, I would fake them out. And if there was like one of the few mons that actually could beat a Dusclops on turn 1, then I would just screen up and would be fine. So it was a team in which I could reasonably get into Trick Room every single week and win that way. But the key is 50% Trick Room is not 100% Trick Room. You do not want to be dependent on it every single week. And so I could build some game plans that ignored Trick Room, like Ninetales Leafeon Suncore was kind of decent. Lando Grimmsnarl with max Airstreams is a very good lead. Like Prim could work in any speed. I put some Choice Scarfs on. So it was a team in which I didn't need Trick Room, but it was a very, very reliable option for me. One of the privileges of running a top-tier, massive bulk Trick Room setter is you get to basically disrespect everything your opponent is doing, because nothing is actually going to make Dusclops lose his turn or go down in a reasonable amount of time. Like, this is a game in which I'm not going to I'm going to maybe fast forward through a lot of it, but my opponent played this like perfectly. They had the perfect setup to stop a Dusclops Trick Room setup. It was a fake out the partner, and then they taunted the Dusclops, so I couldn't set up Trick Room. But like, I'm just pivoting around and knowing that nothing's going to reasonably KO me. I use Dusclops to switch into hits. I eventually do get a Trick Room, a very ill-advised Machamp Dynamax in the hopes that I could break through Clefairy. Doesn't even work, as you see here. Clefairy survives. Clefairy's strong. But I give up on that. I'm very behind at this point in the game. I get into Trick Room because they're ignoring the Dusclops, and then I bring in 2 Trick Room attackers, but like, they still have the right answers to me. So I'm not able to abuse my Trick Room that effectively. Rillaboom is definitely about to OHKO this Primarina, but then Protect bought me a turn, but then I switch in the Dusclops, and then a Miracle Seed boosted Rillaboom Woodhammer. We're fine, we don't even care. Like, Dusclops is that bulky, doesn't even do half. And so I'm pivoting around, I'm trying to make use of my Trick Room, knowing that Dusclops will be able to set another one before it goes down. I switch around. This is where I probably lose my Machamp. I lose my Primarina. Next turn, I lose Vikavolt, and it's just down to Dusclops. And it's taunted, so it can't do any status moves, but Dusclops has a 70 attack stat, so it's like a mini Dusknoir in that sense. Not as good at offense, but extra good at bulk. Latias Soldew boosted Draco Meteor. After the Rillaboom hit, we're still fine. And so it's not 0 damage. This Rock Tomb was here to proc Weakness Policy Vikavolt, and so like, it wasn't even offensive invested, but it was enough to finish it off with the Hail Chip, with the burn, and then he's now just left with a pure support mon with no attacks. So Dusclops, Rock Tomb is just enough to get there. That's the privilege of running absolute maximum bulk. It's a little bit more than Dusknoir could reasonably handle, but Dusknoir would have been able to take out some of these mons. So different speeds for different kinds of games. This is how you use a top tier, super bulky Trick Room setter to protect a whole team. I think I might run like a taunt blocking ability like Alchemy or something to help Dusclops set Trick Room. These days I would probably run a couple more faster mons to keep up with the pace. Really good Draft League players have multiple fast options and multiple ways to deal with Trick Room. Oh look, it's another viable Trick Room setter, and probably one that most people have forgotten about because it's a very forgettable Pokemon, but any mon with Trick Room is viable, and particularly when it's bulkier than most Pokemon, when it's not weak to Ghost and Dark, and in fact has only one weakness, a very good defensive typing there, and then it's got a move pool that you can imagine usefulness for. I'm going to dive right into sample sets to see how Audino can become a useful but not passive Trick Room setter. Like, you got your one weakness, and then you're patching it up with a Resist Berry. You're running maximum defense, and then Audino is hitting Trick Room most of the time when it wants to. And so what do you do once you're in Trick Room? Well, Ally Switch, for better or for worse, really good for making a passive mon unavoidable or unignorable, and then healing up your partner. So you got the mix-up of either haha you're hitting me, or haha you're hitting something that keeps healing on you, so you need to actually target the healer. You've got one attack that hits everybody and never misses, so that's pretty solid. You could even imagine this as a Calm Mind sweeper. Like, you'll see a trend here in the Draftables is that almost every single Pokemon is viable with Calm Mind. You won't be able to like take Okos from turn 1. You can ignore Audino for a turn or two, but in the long run, Calm Minds will pose a problem. Draining Kiss with Calm Mind boosts are actually going to heal reasonable damage back, and this thing's going to be very hard to take out. Life Dew makes a mon pretty hard to ignore when it's healing itself and it's healing its partner. Yawn makes a mon completely impossible to ignore because you're gonna keep falling asleep if you don't switch out. And so you've got Fire Blast to do a non-trivial amount of damage onto steel types and some other fire weak mons, and then Hyper Voice for everything else. This is a mon that you can kind of mold in your own way. Don't expect it to do big damage, but you can combine a real move pool with utility, and with, most importantly, Trick Room. Trick Room is a threat. Anytime a mon on the field can learn Trick Room, then it's a threat that the opponent has to account for. It does not mean you have to actually use that threat. While the opponent is fearing Trick Room and trying to address that, you just throw out a Choice Banded Body Slam. Like, it seems silly, but like, Choice Band can make Audino have a real offensive presence. Body Slam is big damage and big paras. The right coverage move for the right circumstance. Choice Band Drain Punch is a 2-hit KO onto Stack Attacka. Like that, you know, mold your mon for the different use cases. That's kind of the overall point of a lot of Draftables episodes, is that you should have tools after watching these episodes to look into a mon you've never looked at before and just imagine different ways you could use it. This guy's got coverage to be an attacker every once in a while. It's got the ability to be a setup sweeper every once in a while. It's got the ability to be really annoying with some of these support moves. Like, that's probably the most common way in which you'll run it, is support moves and just be a big hassle. This is a mon that should be hard to ignore with the right moves on it, and it's got Trick Room, so don't overcomplicate the game. Bulky Trick Room and support moves make any mon viable. This is a mon that I would pay maybe 6 or 7 points for, particularly if you've forgotten about Trick Room and it's late in the draft. This is a mon that might be available. So yeah, another viable Trick Room setter for your records to file in your brain. Another answer to the question, how much Trick Room should you have on your Draft League team? This is a different approach that I also think works. We've already looked at the Trick Room heavy team where like half the mons would prefer Trick Room. This is a Trick Room efficient team where 2 slots are very good in Trick Room and the rest of the team probably prefers Fast Mode. What's really nice about this is that a lot of Trick Room modes that aren't particularly great against a Scavalier can't even function properly. From the opponent's perspective, why would I even bring Trick Room just to lose to a Scavalier? Why would I even bring Trick Room when Musharna is just going to reverse it on me, or just take advantage of Trick Room? So one really good Trick Room setter, one really good Trick Room sweeper is all you need to reasonably address Trick Room most of the time. I mean, Fake Out's good, Taunt's good, he's got sources of those things to stop Trick Room when he's not bringing these two, but this is an ever-present threat. a lot of the time, like, this is slower than opponent's Trick Room mode, so it makes it really, really uncomfortable. It becomes a guessing game, right? Like, I only have a good Trick Room mode if a Scavalier doesn't show up. And even if it's just there sitting on the bench when the opponent has no plans to bring it, I really fretted when I was playing against Vinny's team about Musharna and Scavalier. He's like, he's gonna set Trick Room now. He's gonna set Trick Room now. And he never did. It was never the plan for him to set Trick Room, but it was an ever-present factor. It made it hard for my Trick Room team to do as well. And so these two provide a lot of cover for the fast mode to do what it wants to do. Go fast, hit things. Noivern, Lando, Cinderace, aggressive Mons. I don't think this was a perfect team. I would update it for the non-Dynamax era. I would probably replace Noivern with like a Whimsicott, or wouldn't we all prefer to replace Noivern with a Whimsicott? But there's a couple of changes I would make, but this is a team that addressed Trick Room without having to devote a lot of attention to it. And if you're a player that just doesn't like Trick Room very much for whatever reason, you do not have the option to say, I'm just going to not play Trick Room while I'm playing VGC. Your opponents will not do what you want all of the time. And if you're a team that really, really clearly doesn't want Trick Room, like if this same team, but with two more fast Mons over Musharna and Scavalier, you're going to see Trick Room coming against you every single week, because the good players have that option, and they're going to use that option against the teams that obviously are unprepared for it. You're going to spend four Trick Room turns losing in one way or another, on your back foot, having to switch, having to protect. And you're going to be pretty frustrated. That's what makes people not like Trick Room, is just not respecting it enough, and then they keep losing to it. So you do not need to have a lot of your team be Trick Room compatible or Trick Room preferred, but at least one anti-Trick Room Mon, at least one Trick Room setter, even if it's a frail Trick Room setter, one of the Sash Trick Roomers, at least gives you that option, right? It might be scary, but like anytime Alakazam is on the field, I at least need to know that reversing Trick Room is a possibility. And so I'm always going to focus down Alakazam because hitting it's pretty good, so then it gets to protect. And so it just gives you way more options when you have a little bit of ability to address Trick Room. Public service announcement before I get to showcasing my final Trick Room Mon. The Draftables is meant to be a limited series. I don't want to just churn out episode after episode until they just become less and less important, less and less valuable. I want to make this the best series out there for leveling up your VGC Draft League game. I think I'm on my way, because I just don't see a lot of things like this. And so my plan is to make 10 episodes and then pause for a good long while until I've built up enough new conclusions that I think I have good topics. Maybe Gen 9 will give me some fertile ground for new topics. But I'll play the YouTube game. This is your boy trying to play the YouTube game. If you like this content, if you appreciate this content, I'll make more. If you hit a like goal, 25 likes, I think it's achievable. If I reach 100 subscribers, I'll make you an extra big jumbo 12th Draftables episode. I think it's achievable. I think some of y'all are really liking the series, and I really feel personally validated by y'all liking the series. Like, this is, to be honest, one of the best things I've done with my past year. One of the things I've certainly put my most time in. Luckily, I have a supportive partner. But I would make more. I'll encourage you guys to have me make more. If not, I'll eventually make more. Let's move on. Carbink. Have you ever thought about Carbink? Maybe you haven't. But I think Carbink's kind of a hidden gem. Get it? Because it's like a gem. But Carbink is bulky Trick Room, sturdy, cannot be OHKO'd by anything, and has Moonblast. You don't have to overcomplicate this game that much, right? Every Mon with Trick Room is good, I've argued, and I believe that. Every Mon with bulk NTR is very usable. And so Carbink is a Mon that I've seen cost 3 points on a Draft League board. I've seen it cost 5 a few times, and I think it can be worth more than that. Particularly, like, it just Trick Room, Bulk, Sturdy, and Moonblast by itself is, I think, a 6-point Mon. But look, it's got a whole move pool. It's got Meteor Beam. You can run Power or Meteor Beam. I have sample sets for this. Like, Fairy plus ground is one of the best coverage combos, like, because everything that resists fairy is weak to ground. So, like, there's virtually nothing that can really stand up to both of these moves. Rock is one of the best offensive moves, and you've got a couple of good attacking moves. This is a mon without any offensive presence here. It's going to need Calm Mind. It's going to need to, like, psych up some boosts, guard split, guard swap. That requires a bigger brain than I have to use effectively, but you can get Carbink going a couple of ways, or you can just slowly deal the damage. If they don't have recovery, that can be fine. This is a mon with a real move pool. Here are the wonderful Carbink sets. Sturdy, can't be O-code, Mental Herb, can't be taunted, Fake Out to prevent double ups. This is basically guaranteed Trick Room. What are you going to do with your Trick Room? Moonblast is one wonderful move where it's over 90 base power and never hits, and is a utility move, can cut their special attack 30% of the time. Such a wonderful move. Combined with ground is perfect coverage. You can set a screen. You can make this like a light clay dual screen setter, totally fine, before it goes down and paves the way for the Trick Room abuser. Meteor Beam, one way to make Carbink not passive here is Power Meteor Beam, a very strong rock move. You've got Power Gem for after Meteor Beam, but like it can run Charm, another good use of one turn to beat a physical attacker. And of course, how can I put Moonblast and Trick Room on every single set? I think that is generally the way here. Like, you can make yourself like a Calm Mind sweeper. This is like the Bulldoze clear body weakness policy setup. So giving that setup allows you to give Carbink speed control while giving it damage boosts in the form of weakness policy. So any mon with a weakness policy can be strong, especially if they have the bulk to actually use it, which Carbink does, even without Dynamax. And you're making it fast at the same time. You're making Calm Minds help you get even stronger so you can target one-hit KOs, but also make it so that the opponent will proc your weakness policy without knocking you out. These three moves cover just about every offensive use case you could ask for. There's also the mix-up of like live the hit, get the weakness policy, and then rock polish, get fast on your own without any kind of assistance with the setup here. So that can be pretty good. Like, finally, every mon with Iron Defense Body Press, you saw it in the Steals episode, is a useful mon. This is a wonderful combination of moves, Moonblast for everything else. There's a lot of matchups where they can bring a steel move that would beat Carbink, but like you can run a Steel Berry, and all those steel mons are getting beat up by a 2x body press. Like, all those steel tips are weak to body press for the most part. So Iron Defense Body Press is viable, support, screens, charm, ally switch always unfortunately is viable, big brain stuff. This is a mon that has a little bit of everything you could ask for, except immediate offensive presence, immediate speed, a better typing would be nice, but this is a Trick Room setter that's not weak to Ghost or Dark, so this is a great second Trick Room setter after you already have your Gengar or your Bronzong or whatever. So this is Carbink in a nutshell, and it's a mon that I think is worth 7 points. It's around Audino, maybe slightly better even, but this is the bulk to live Choice Banded Rillaboom Grassy Glide. This is the bulk to comfortably live Hydro Pump. And if there are just some attacks that you know you can't live, like a Kartana hit, 4 times effective steel move, for everything else they're sturdy. So it's a really good Trick Room setter. It's good at setting Trick Room, it's good at doing support. In some niche circumstances, it can do solid offense. This is a viable Trick Room setter. Every mon with Trick Room is useful. This is even a good Trick Room setter. So this is my last category of Trick Room setter, which is like any mon with Trick Room is useful. So any baby mon, like Eviolite makes them bulky, and so bulky Trick Room is good. All of these like random babies, they can live hits, right? Bronzong, living a Life Orb, Spectre, Shadow Ball. Very, very impressive. The problem with all of these mons is that they have 0 offensive presence. At least Carbink had 50 and Audino had 60. But Bronzor has nothing, 0 offense. So I think you need to spam Hypnosis and Ally Switch, unfortunately, to make Bronzor not passive after it's set Trick Room. In the Dynamax age, it could like proc a weakness policy with Bulldoze and whatnot, but Porygon at least has Foul Play and Eerie Impulse. Just look into every mon with Trick Room and access to Eviolite. They're all good. Like this guy, like Mini Trevenant, can set Will-O-Wisp, can do Leech Seed. Totally reasonable 1 out of 4 weeks. Don't depend on it week in, week out. That's the biggest mistake, is asking a a mon that doesn't primarily set Trick Room to do it every week. But it can do it some weeks. And then this is like the opposite, right? A mon that's very good at setting Tailwind, the other most impactful speed control. Unfortunately, Tailwind, yet another speed control measure that is countered by Trick Room, but like, just think about these baby mons. Like, that's one of the hallmarks of an elite Draft League player is they leave no stone unturned. They look at not fully evolved Pokemon, they look at the mons in the very, very low tiers, and they think, how can I make this work? And so all of these mons can work. Not every week, not most weeks, but sometimes. And certainly good for your second Trick Room setter, because if they're really, really trying to beat your Porygon 2, they're not going to be able to beat the Bronzor too. Bronzor with a Mental Herb? Sure, why not? You ready for the last big section on beating Trick Room? Well, Plan A should be stopping it from going up in the first place, but it's pretty tricky, especially teams that have Redirection plus Trick Room, Fake Out, are making good use of their items, Focus Sash, Mental Herb, of course, but also Resist Berries. Like, you think you have the ability to destroy the Trick Room setter, even if you're blessed with a Trick Room destroyer like Crawdon, who has the strongest dark move out there. They could run a Dark Resist Berry. So all of the common ways of stopping Trick Room are all situational and can be countered. The most foolproof stopping of Trick Room involves having access to Trick Room yourself, which is why I always recommend having at least one Trick Room on, either reversing the Trick Room, or most foolproof is Imprison plus Trick Room. So you've dropped Trick Room for turn 1, but at what cost, right? You're running a mon that only has 2 moves, that's just trying to not die, and you might not stop Trick Room forever. So beating Trick Room teams, or Trick Room modes, often doesn't involves stopping Trick Room, but abusing their setup turn. On their turn, where they're just committing to trying to get Trick Room up, you can Calm Mind right in front of them. You can Swords Dance. You can set screens. You can Substitute. Get one turn ahead can really help you survive the Trick Room. Substitute plus Protect can stall out a whole Trick Room by itself. You can get ahead on debuffing them. You might want to reposition into your Slowmon, knowing I can't stop this Trick Room, but I might as well do my best to work with Trick Room. You can swap in your Trick Room setter so that you're able to reverse it on a future turn. You can just throw out some attacks, get ahead on damage, but I caution against that, especially when they're running that passive Trick Room setup and they want you to knock them out, right? Because they're protecting their Trick Room Sweeper, the one that's actually meant to win the game for them in the back. They want one of their mons to go down so the Trick Room setter or Sweeper can come in earlier. So often a good strategy is to slowly whittle them down, snarl away, and then be able to take out their Trick Room setter by the time Trick Room's over, so they can't set it again and they haven't had any time under Trick Room with their Trick Room abuser. You got into Trick Room, it's not great, but if you're not enjoying Trick Room, every passage of time is good for you. Protect is a winning move if you don't want Trick Room. Fake Out is always good, that wastes a turn. Switching in is good because you're usually taking less damage. If they're targeting something else, it enables you to protect again. It enables you to get more Fake Outs, more Intimidates, more abilities to stretch out the game. Once Trick Room is up, you just have to sit in for a long game, and then once Trick Room is not up, then you get to Swords Dance in front of them, or you just get to smack them. Focus on their Trick Room abuser. If you can play a 2v1, then you can win even against a really strong Trick Room Sweeper. Ignore the Dusclops. It's usually not doing that much. Ignore the Clefairy. It can't do that much on its own. Other passive redirectors. A surprise Iron Ball or Room Service goes a long way. This is not something that you can do in the heat of battle, right? You need to plan to beat their Trick Room, but you can have just one of your 6 mons on your team devoted as a Trick Room answer, and a surprise Iron Ball can really win you the game because they're setting Trick Room, they're bothering with their passive turn, and then you're the one actually taking advantage of it with a surprise Iron Ball or Room Service. It can be pretty good. Some cool options that are newly available post Dynamax is Encore. Encore, I still have not figured out how to deal with Encore, especially Prankster Encore, forcing someone to reverse the Trick Room that they had just set the previous turn, and now they're locked into just Trick Rooming or switching out. You're wasting multiple of their turns at this point. If you can land a Prankster Encore, it is devastating. This is when my Trick Room did nothing. This was a very eye-opening game for me because I saw the limitations of Trick Room and how to beat it. It was a 2-step process with Dynamax. You would, step 1, set Trick Room, step 2, blow them all away. But it's a little trickier with non-Dynamax, especially against opponents that really know how to use their defensive options. This is multiple-time Draft League champion Angel, and I've brought my Redirection plus Trick Room setup. I've EV'd to live the strong spread move. Everything's going according to plan. I even get a yawn off as I set Trick Room. Looking good, right? Well, how does Angel survive the Trick Room? First turn is a double switch. You have no idea what you're going to be hitting. I even have the right move to hit the switch in really hard, but Angel is intimidating. So my have attack drops down, and I'm making a mistake here, which is going for Yawns, a slow-paced move when you need to be using your 4 turns of Trick Room aggressively. And so I eventually get with the program and swap into my Scorch. But what's Angel doing? A third switch in a row, another Intimidate. This time it's a resisted hit, so I'm not able to take the knockout, and this is her only attack of the entire Trick Room. It draws First Blood. I'm not able to take a single KO during my Trick Room, because what does she do in the last turn? Protect, protect. There's no way to punish that unless I had a setup move of my own, which I did not. So without my delicate Redirection plus Trick Room setup, I have 2 slow Mons going last, and they're sitting ducks in that case, and you can save yourself an extra turn if you call the protects correctly, as I did, but I think this game is pretty much decided at this point. Another thing that made this really tough is how much Angel did not respect my fast mode. The key, as I've been saying about Trick Room, is that you can't depend on it every week, because the benefit of being a Trick Room player in any given week is that they need to respect your fast mode in team building. They need to invest some of their points into speed. They sometimes need to run a Choice Scarfer, and then you turn all of that around on them while you get to fully invest in offense and defense. But if your opponent doesn't respect your fast mode, as Angel did, these are Mons fully invested into bulk and offense, and I just can't break through them. Speed control is not enough if your opponent just got better Mons defending themselves better than yours. I even sneak in my second Trick Room here, but I'm just too passive. Like, these Mons are too good. And another way that Angel handled Trick Room well was the threat of Taunt. You would never expect to taunt on a Heatran, or at least I wouldn't, but you can target the more passive elements of a Trick Room team, the Redirector, the Trick Room Setter, with Taunt. So Angel had all the tools. Trick Room is the most impactful turn of any given game, but it does not win you the game. You need to be pivoting effectively. You need setup moves. Frequently in non-Dynamax, you can't just Dynamax to scale. You need to be able to get 2-hit KOs, 1-hit KOs where you can get them, and you need to be doing more than this Togetic is doing. So Angel had my number this game, but it gets to the heart of Trick Room. When you use Trick Room, time is not on your side. You get 4 turns, and you better use them, because you wasted a turn. Every turn outside of Trick Room is going to be a rough one when you've got slow Pokemon, so you need to be targeting 1-hit KOs with a massive Rainbow Mon like Drampa, or at least 2-hit KOs with a Rainbow-y Mon like Dusknoir. You need to be swapping into your Trick Room abusers as fast as possible, making the most of those turns. You need to be calling your protects correctly. If you use your Trick Room well, you usually win the game. But Trick Room is more than about just clicking at every turn or every game you're in. It's about the threat of Trick Room, how it makes your opponent think differently during team building, how it affects them during team preview and what they choose to bring to the match, and even lurking in the back. 4 Mons on the field, none of them learn Trick Room. It's still a factor, because you might not go for that Dragon Dance if you know your opponent has a Trick Room setter. It might be in the back, and it might turn that Dragon Dance against you. So there are several viable approaches to addressing Trick Room, but you better have one. You better have multiple. I recommend multiple Taunters on any given Draft League squad, as much Fake Out as you can get your hands on, and 2 Trick Room setters. Even if one is not good at setting Trick Room, Gengar can do 12 threatening things to you, so you're not going to preemptively taunt the Gengar. Sometimes it's just going to get the Trick Room, and you're going to be totally surprised by it. But one bulky Trick Room setter, one Mon that's there to surprise reverse Trick Room every once in a while. There are lots of ways of handling it, but you better have them. Trick Room is not an optional part of Draft League. VGC Draft League, it is very important. So, turns out this entire 40-plus minute episode was one ad for Aromatisse, the best Trick Room setter on God's green earth. Aromatisse blocks Taunt, Fairy-type Trick Room setter, Fake Tears for massive damage, Calm Mind, Moonblast, so good. Trick Room!